In the dense, unforgiving terrain of the Karzak Mountains, an elite battalion of 600 soldiers found themselves caught in a nightmare. The enemy had orchestrated a devastating ambush, surrounding them on all sides with relentless precision. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the jagged rocks and dense foliage, but the soldiers' grim reality was illuminated only by the flashes of muzzle fire and the echoing booms of explosions. Communications crackled with urgent, fragmented messages, the ground reinforcements were hours away, and the air support, vital for any hope of extraction, was struggling to maintain a foothold against the enemy's sophisticated anti-aircraft defenses. Lieutenant Maya Carter sat in the cockpit of her Black Hawk helicopter, the whir of rotors blending with the tension that filled the cabin. At 29, Maya was known among her peers for her calm and collected demeanor, a steady hand in the face of chaos. Yet, despite her composure, some senior officers doubted her unconventional flying style. Her willingness to push the limits of protocol in favor of instinct and innovation made her a controversial figure within the ranks. But those who truly knew Maya understood that her methods were born from a relentless dedication to mastering the impossible. Maya's journey had not been an easy one. As one of the first female Black Hawk pilots in her division, she had shattered barriers in a traditionally male-dominated field. Her early days were marked by skepticism and quiet challenges, but she responded with rigorous training and an unyielding commitment to excellence. She specialized in extraction scenarios considered too dangerous or complex for others, honing her skills through countless simulations and real-world missions that tested every ounce of her resolve and ingenuity. Today was no different, and yet, the stakes had never been higher. The desperate situation unfolding below called for more than just skill, it demanded courage that bordered on recklessness. The battalion was pinned down, surrounded by enemy forces equipped with heavy machine guns, mortars, and snipers expertly camouflaged within the rocks and trees. The soldiers' ammunition was dwindling, their morale faltering as the minutes stretched into hours. The terrain itself was a nightmare for conventional air support. Treacherous mountain ridges and narrow valleys funneled the Black Hawks into predictable flight paths, making them easy targets for the enemy's anti-aircraft fire. As Maya listened to the radio chatter, her mind raced through the possibilities. The command center had already ruled out direct air support for the extraction. The risks were too high, the chance of losing more lives unacceptable. Ground reinforcements were delayed indefinitely due to enemy movements and the harsh terrain. The soldiers below were effectively trapped in a killing zone. It was a scenario that spelled disaster for nearly every commander who faced it, except for Maya. Without waiting for orders, Maya volunteered for the rescue mission. Her proposal was met with resistance. "It's too dangerous," her commanding officer warned, the concern in his voice barely masking the disbelief. "We can't risk another helicopter being shot down." Others echoed the sentiment, questioning whether her unorthodox flying approach was suited for such a high-stakes operation. But Maya's determination was unwavering. She had spent years preparing for moments like this, mastering maneuvers that could evade ground fire and navigating terrain obstacles with surgical precision. Her knowledge of the landscape, combined with her instinctual flying style, gave her confidence that others simply lacked. As the briefing ended, Maya took a deep breath and climbed into her Black Hawk, the familiar controls steady beneath her fingers. She ran through her mental checklist, visualizing the extraction route she had mapped out, one that skirted enemy positions, exploited natural cover, and took advantage of her aircraft's agility. This was not a mission for cautious flying, it was a calculated risk, a gamble that demanded both nerve and precision. The soldiers on the ground could hear the distant roar of helicopter blades, a sound that brought a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. But as Maya's Black Hawk approached the drop zone, the enemy's anti-aircraft weapons opened fire, tracer rounds streaking the sky like deadly needles. Maya's instincts kicked in. She banked sharply, weaving through the incoming fire with a fluidity that defied the rigid protocols her superiors preferred. Her eyes scanned the terrain constantly, searching for safe landing zones amid the rocky outcrops and dense trees. Inside the cockpit, Maya's voice was calm but commanding as she coordinated with the trapped soldiers and her support team. "Hold tight, we're coming in low and fast. Keep your heads down and be ready to move." Her communication was precise, every word designed to instill confidence and maintain order amid the panic. The first landing was the most perilous. With the Black Hawk skimming just above the treetops, Maya navigated a narrow clearing barely wider than the helicopter's rotor span. Enemy fire cracked dangerously close, but her steady hands and sharp reflexes kept the aircraft stable. The soldiers sprinted toward the chopper, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten as hope surged within them. Maya's door gunner provided suppressive fire, buying precious seconds for the soldiers to climb aboard. As the Black Hawk lifted off, Maya's focus never wavered. She adjusted her flight path to avoid enemy fire and terrain hazards, the helicopter responding seamlessly to her every command. The soldiers inside caught their breath, their gratitude unspoken but palpable. Maya's daring move had turned a desperate ambush into a lifeline. But Maya knew this was only the beginning. The remaining soldiers were still trapped, and the enemy's grip was tightening. Each subsequent extraction run demanded the same nerve and skill, each approach a dance with death. The terrain offered no mercy, and the enemy was relentless, but Maya's resolve was stronger. She was the thread of hope weaving through the chaos, the difference between survival and annihilation. Back at the command center, skepticism lingered. Some questioned her decision to defy orders and volunteer for such a risky mission. Others worried about the consequences if her gamble failed. But for Maya, the lives of those 600 soldiers were worth every ounce of risk. She had trained for this moment, prepared to face the impossible head-on, and she was ready to prove that courage and innovation could rewrite the fate of a battalion trapped in the jaws of death. The Black Hawk's rotor sliced through the mountain air as Lieutenant Maya Carter pushed her aircraft deeper into the lethal embrace of the Karzak Mountains. The enemy's anti-aircraft fire was relentless, tracer rounds cutting arcs of deadly light just meters from her cockpit. Yet Maya's grip on the controls remained unshaken, her eyes scanning every ridge, every shadow, every possible hiding spot where enemy fighters might lie in wait. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the surge of focus that came with threading the needle of survival and salvation. Her first pass had been a narrow escape, the soldiers she'd rescued clung to her like lifelines, their exhaustion palpable but their hope rekindled. Now, Maya prepared for the next run. The valley below was a powder keg, with enemy forces tightening their noose, but the trapped battalion had begun to regroup, drawing strength from the promise of extraction. Maya's job was far from over. She banked her Black Hawk sharply, dipping low beneath the treetops to evade the radar-guided anti-aircraft fire that had already downed 2 support helicopters in earlier attempts. The terrain was a maze of jagged rocks and steep inclines, a natural fortress for the enemy, but Maya's intimate knowledge of these mountains gave her an edge. Years of training and countless simulations played out in her mind, guiding her hands as she maneuvered the chopper with surgical precision. Approaching the extraction point, Maya announced calmly over the radio, her voice steady despite the tension thick in the cabin. "Prepare for immediate boarding." The soldiers below responded with a mix of relief and urgency, their movements coordinated despite the chaos. Maya's door gunner opened fire on enemy positions, the staccato of the machine gun suppressing hostile fire long enough for the soldiers to sprint towards the helicopter. Maya's Black Hawk hovered just above the uneven ground, the downdraft whipping dust and leaves into a furious whirlwind. Every second counted. Enemy snipers took aim, and a sudden burst of fire ripped through the helicopter's fuselage, sparks flying as bullets grazed the frame. Maya's instincts kicked in instinctively. She adjusted the collective and cyclic controls, lifting the chopper just enough to clear the treetops but maintaining a tight orbit to keep the extraction zone accessible. The soldiers scrambled aboard, their faces etched with exhaustion and grim determination. "Go, go, go," Maya urged, her voice cutting through the noise, pushing the soldiers to move faster as the enemy regrouped for another assault. The Black Hawk surged upward, accelerating away from the kill zone. Maya's mind raced through contingencies, if any systems failed, if the enemy closed in, if the ground reinforcements still couldn't break through. But she refused to let doubt creep in. Her flying was her weapon, and today it was sharper than ever. As she climbed to a safer altitude, Maya coordinated with the remaining forces on the ground. "Hold your positions and stay low. I'm coming back for the next group." Her words were a promise and a challenge, a beacon of hope that galvanized the battered soldiers. The next approach was even more perilous. The enemy, anticipating her return, had repositioned heavy machine guns and deployed mobile anti-aircraft units to cover likely extraction points. Maya's Black Hawk weaved through a hail of bullets and shrapnel, the aircraft shuddering under the assault but responding to her every command. Her flying style was unorthodox, she banked aggressively, took sharp turns at low altitudes, and used the mountain's natural contours to mask her movements. It was risky, bordering on reckless, but it was the only way to outmaneuver the enemy's firepower. Inside the cockpit, Maya's focus was absolute. Her hands danced over the controls, her eyes flicking between instruments and the rapidly approaching landing zone. She synchronized with the door gunner, who provided suppressive fire, and with the soldiers signaling their position among the rocks and trees. Visual on target, Maya reported. Landing zone is hot. Gunner, keep them pinned down. Let's move. The Black Hawk descended swiftly, sucking up the dust and debris as it settled into the narrow clearing. The soldiers hurried forward, carrying wounded comrades and their remaining gear. Maya's heart ached at the sight of their injuries, but she forced herself to stay detached. Every second on the ground increased the risk for everyone. Again, enemy fire erupted, bullets tearing through the helicopter's side panels. Maya's door gunner responded with a hail of lead, keeping the attackers at bay. The soldiers climbed aboard in a frantic but organized rush. Maya's co-pilot monitored the aircraft systems, alerting her to signs of damage, but Maya dismissed the warnings. She wouldn't let mechanical issues dictate the mission. As the Black Hawk lifted off, Maya glanced back at the mountainside, the battalion's last holdout before escape. She knew the enemy wouldn't relent, that the next run would be as deadly as the last. Back in the air, Maya's voice was calm but resolute. Status check, systems holding, no critical damage. Next pickup in 5 minutes. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. The soldiers aboard exchanged weary glances, their hope rekindled but tempered by the brutal reality outside. Maya's actions had shifted the momentum. The battalion was no longer trapped, they were moving toward safety. But the battle was far from over. During the brief respite, Maya reviewed her maps and reconnaissance data. She adjusted her flight path to avoid known enemy artillery positions and identified a series of ridges that could provide cover for her approach. Her mind worked quickly, calculating the risks and rewards of each maneuver. As the next extraction window opened, Maya flew low and fast, threading the helicopter through a narrow mountain pass that few pilots dared to navigate. Enemy fire followed her like a shadow, but her unyielding focus and intimate knowledge of the terrain allowed her to dodge the worst of it. Each landing was a race against time. The soldiers' discipline under fire was remarkable, they moved with practiced efficiency, climbing aboard with grim determination. Maya's Black Hawk shuddered under the strain of repeated assaults, but she refused to yield. At one point, the aircraft's engine sputtered, a warning light flashing ominously on the dashboard. Maya's co-pilot warned of potential mechanical failure, but Maya's voice remained steady. Keep her steady. We're almost clear. With a final burst of speed, she pulled the Black Hawk away from the valley floor, ascending rapidly to avoid an incoming barrage of rocket fire. The soldiers inside cheered quietly, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the relief of survival. Over the course of several perilous runs, Maya extracted nearly all 600 soldiers. Each approach was a test of nerves and skill, a delicate dance between life and death. Her flying broke conventional rules, her maneuvers defied protocol, but they saved lives, hundreds of them. Through it all, Maya faced moments of doubt and close calls that could have ended the mission in disaster. But her resolve never faltered. She was a force of nature in the sky, a guardian angel for the trapped battalion below. With every successful extraction, the tide shifted, and the impossible began to feel within reach. The Black Hawk touched down on the base's tarmac under a muted sky, its rotors slowing in a rhythmic whine that seemed to echo the exhaustion and relief of those on board. Lieutenant Maya Carter stepped out, her flight suit streaked with dust and punctuated by the faintest traces of blood from scrapes sustained during the frantic extractions. Around her, the air buzzed with a mixture of awe and skepticism. The soldiers she had saved, nearly all of them, moved with renewed energy, some leaning heavily on comrades, others embracing relief in quiet gratitude. Yet, amidst the palpable respect, Maya could sense the lingering doubts held by her superiors. As Maya made her way toward the command center, she was met with a barrage of questions and cautious congratulations. The mission had defied every protocol, every calculated risk assessment that had dictated the earlier decisions to hold back air support. Her unauthorized decision to volunteer and execute the daring rescue had saved hundreds of lives, but it also opened a Pandora's box of military debate. Some saw her as reckless, a loose cannon who endangered not only herself but potentially the entire battalion. Others recognized that her actions had rewritten the boundaries of what was considered possible in combat aviation. Major Reynolds, the commanding officer who had initially ordered her to stand down, awaited her arrival with a stern expression. "Lieutenant Carter," he began, voice heavy with both reprimand and reluctant admiration, "your actions were unorthodox and unauthorized. You risked your aircraft and your life against direct orders. Maya met his gaze steadily. With all due respect, sir, the lives on the ground were at risk of being wiped out. I couldn't stand by. Major Reynolds paused, the weight of her words settling in the room. You saved nearly every soldier in that battalion. That cannot be overlooked. The debate that followed was intense and multifaceted. Senior officers convened to analyze the mission's after-action reports, weighing the risks against the undeniable success. Policies around air support and extraction protocols were scrutinized, and the need for flexibility and innovation in the face of evolving battlefield realities became a central theme. Maya's mission became a case study in adaptability, challenging the rigid doctrines that had long governed military aviation operations. Rather than facing formal punishment, Maya was entrusted with a new responsibility: to translate her experience into training for other pilots. Her first-hand knowledge of navigating hostile terrain under heavy fire, combined with her instinctual and unconventional flying techniques, became invaluable assets for the military's evolving doctrine. She developed specialized training modules that emphasized adaptability, terrain reading, and rapid decision-making, skills that could mean the difference between life and death in future engagements. Maya's rise as an instructor was swift. She took on the role with the same intensity and passion that had defined her flying career. Her mantra, "Read the ground like a book," became a guiding principle for her students, encouraging them to see beyond instruments and protocols, to understand the battlefield in its entirety. Her classes included simulations that mirrored the chaos she had faced, pushing pilots to think creatively and react decisively under pressure. Her influence extended beyond the classroom. Military aviation doctrine began to shift, incorporating the lessons learned from her mission. New guidelines allowed for greater pilot discretion in extraction scenarios, recognizing that rigid adherence to protocol could sometimes be a liability rather than an asset. The role of female pilots in combat, once a subject of contention, gained broader acceptance as Maya's success highlighted the critical contributions they could make when given the opportunity. Maya's story became emblematic of a broader transformation within the military, one that valued courage, innovation, and the willingness to challenge established norms in service of a higher mission. Her actions not only saved lives but also reshaped the way missions were planned and executed, ensuring that future pilots were better equipped to face the unpredictable and deadly realities of modern warfare. Among her students, Maya was more than an instructor, she was a symbol of resilience and determination. She inspired a new generation of pilots to push boundaries, to trust their instincts, and to understand that sometimes the greatest victories come from the courage to act when others hesitate. As the years passed, Maya's contributions continued to resonate throughout military aviation circles. Her mission in the Karzak Mountains was studied, celebrated, and taught as a pivotal moment in the evolution of combat rescue operations. The battalion she saved remained a testament to her skill and bravery, proof that when lives hang in the balance, it takes more than orders and protocols, it takes heart and unwavering resolve. Lieutenant Maya Carter's legacy was not just in the lives she saved that day but in the enduring change she sparked. She proved that in the crucible of combat, adaptability and courage could redefine the mission, transforming desperation into hope and chaos into coordinated action. Her story was a reminder that sometimes, to save hundreds, it takes one person willing to fly into the storm and rewrite the rules.